So let's look at some common issues for the elbow and the hand. One of the main things that we see a lot of people struggling with are carpal tunnel symptoms or actual carpal tunnel itself. Now the tricky thing about carpal tunnel is that a person can be having this restriction in and around the wrist where the carpal tunnel actually is, and there can be any kind of an impingement further up into the forearm or the elbow that is actually mimicking carpal tunnel symptoms. From there, thoracic outlet syndrome is another big issue for a lot of people. As so many people have jobs where they're having to sit all day long or they're driving, texting is actually adding to that quite a bit, spending time on our computers, emailing and Facebooking. All of these different things have an impact on impinging the musculature or the vasculature, the nerves, the veins, and the arteries that actually innervate your elbow and your hand. And if there's an impingement anywhere along this chain, that could limit the functionality of your hands and elbows. Golfers or tennis elbows are actually big ones. Now you actually don't have to be a golfer or a tennis player to suffer from this particular condition. Any repetitive motion where you're using your hand, your forearm, your elbow can really facilitate injury and inflammation on the inside or the outside of that elbow. Weakness is another big one. Just the general ability to hold a gallon of milk or a coffee cup. What happens is all of these connective tissues around the arm, the elbow, and the hand start to get tight. They actually can put extra restriction on the veins and the artery and the nerves that are supplying signal into your hand, and that can facilitate weakness or your inability to hold things. So weakness is another very common issue, especially for our older patients as they start to lose muscle mass and those connective tissues really start to glue together. And then obviously pain. Pain anywhere from the elbow, within the forearm itself, carpal tunnel, within the hand, the individual fingers, if a person is having any kind of joint issues or arthritis issues, obviously is a main report that people experience with pain. So what we need to understand with the body is that everything is completely connected. And how our medical system has formulated itself over the last, let's say, 100 years or so, is that we've been led to believe that our body are individual pieces and parts. That if you take out the bad Lego and you put in the good Lego or the new part, then you're going to be 100% perfect. And the truth is that that is just not how it works whatsoever. The body is actually big, long sheets of tissue, and they're big, long nerves. They're long veins and arteries that are all completely connected together. And so this method of treatment that we've created in our country, where you just treat this one area right here, or you only focus on this one spot, or you get the injection at just this one site, can lead people to having a life of chronic pain, and they're constantly chasing around all of these different symptoms, and nothing is really improving. So the big thing to keep in mind to facilitate big picture long-term change is that you need to be able to have an understanding of how all of these regions work together, and when you can look at how they are related to each other, you're going to have a bigger impact on the quality of your life overall. So understanding that everything is connected, again, as we look at how all of these muscles come up and they run throughout the length of the body, from the top to the bottom, from the middle to the outside. Embryologically, when our body is developing, everything develops in big sheets of tissue all at one time, and not just individual Legos like we talked about before. And then we have this webbing of tissue called fascial tissue. Now what's really interesting about this fascial tissue is that it has become very popularized the last 5 to 10 years or so as we're getting better imaging from a microscopic level. There's actually some doctors that are doing some phenomenal imaging, and we now know that this fascial tissue is more abundant than what we ever imagined. But the key is that we can't ever just focus on one tissue. So while the fascial tissue is important, all of the tissues are all connected throughout the whole entire body.